Welcome to Prose and Cons, a podcast by writers for writers, brought to you by Precipice Fiction. Precipice Fiction would like to acknowledge the people of the Eora and Durag nations as the original custodians and storytellers of the land this podcast was created on.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Prose and Cons. My name is Phoenix, and today we have Allie.
Hello.
And we have... we also have Alex.
Oh, it's me. Hello.
Tight-knit little group of three today, and we're going to be talking to you about endurance, writing endurance. What does it mean? How does it feel? How do we get through it? When is it necessitated? And when is it good to just let things go? So off of that, the question that I have for you two is, what are you two consuming these days? I completely forgot.
So I'm wrapped up in catching up with Obi-Wan, as that's just dropped. That's probably going to be old news by the time people listen to this podcast, but it is currently just dropped. So 3 episodes into that and enjoying it. My stance with Star Wars is that I've always loved it, but I've always been able to acknowledge that it's also super dumb. It is inconsistent. It is silly. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So I feel like when people get precious about their Star Wars, not being as good as it used to be, it's like, what did you watch in the first place? But no, I've always been able to love it and acknowledge that it's super silly. And Obi-Wan is continuing that tradition.
That's cool. Is it a TV show?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Not sure how many episodes it's going to be, but looking forward to it.
Is that related to the last one they put out with Boba Fett? Is it like a continuation or same guy or
same universe?
Yeah.
I don't think it's the same creative team. I haven't actually watched Boba Fett, and it got a little bit annihilated in its reviews, but I think it's getting a second season as well. Yeah, they're kind of just doing the extended Marvel thing, but now Star Wars. They're just going to keep adding more and more stuff.
Yeah.
On Disney Plus to the canon.
Which is fair. I mean, there'll be some good stuff, there'll be some terrible stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
I've been basically just really smashing TikTok stuff. I did this course, this 10-day like intensive boot camp sort of thing on
10 days.
Yeah. I mean, look, it was online, so you were only spending maybe a couple of hours a day on it, like an hour to 2 hours. But I've been really going through that, really familiarizing myself with the ins and outs of Book Talk, which is essentially the community that focuses on books, obviously. And that's been going really well. I've kind of jumped up to about 1,000 followers over that period. So
very quickly.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a nonsense metric, but it feels good, So I've been doing a lot of that, making a lot of videos for that, which has been really fun. And I've also been reading F. Scott Fitzgerald's. I think it's a posthumous compilation of his work called On Booze, and it's just all his writing tangentially related to booze. And
that's fantastic.
Yeah, I don't think he even put it together. It's like someone else has just done it. It's very good. It's very, very good. Short little book, just a little, little slim volume. Yeah, that's what I've been doing.
I love the idea that 100 years in the future, someone will trawl through our texts, find a connecting theme, and force an anthology out of it. And imagine if you ended up being the booze guy.
Well, it's a significant part of his life, unfortunately.
I've been finally in book 3 of Lord of the Rings, which feels good. And then I've been, in the last week, smashing through Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, author of Eat, Pray, Love. Yeah, that's how most people know her. It actually says it on the cover, author of Eat, Pray, Love.
Doesn't even have her name. It just says author of.
It's a very beautiful book, and actually it's she's a writer, so she actually just talks a lot about creativity and inspiration and her writing process, and there are a lot of permission pieces in it. And she talks about her endurance, and it's actually really beautiful and pretty inspiring for myself. So Elizabeth Gilbert, if you're listening, thank you very much for the contribution.
We'll have to tag her in this.
Yeah,
send her an email.
I guess off of touching on Elizabeth Gilbert and her endurance, I guess, in what moments do you feel like when you picture in this moment, you picture yourself enduring, like picturing yourself in one of your endurance moments, like where you're slugging through or whatever endurance means to you, what comes to mind? What do you first picture yourself doing? What is endurance for you? Alex, we'll jump to you.
I think the the purest moment of endurance for me, just in general. Like if we're just talking associatively here, I think of jogging. I think of like running. You know, that is kind of the distillation of endurance for me when you're like literally slogging it out. And sometimes I do sort of feel like that when I write. It's almost like this energy bank that's sort of dropped down and down, and you're like, come on, just a little bit more, and you're like on that like. You're just trying to get to like 200 words and you're at like 136 and you like look at the clock and you check your emails and then you like go like, oh, yeah, there's something, and you know, you get maybe another 10. But yeah, that is kind of endurance to me. It feels like a slog. It feels like you're like jogging and you've like peaked out a little bit.
Do you feel it most when you are trying to get words on a page, or do you feel it most when you're editing, or like what's your endurance space?
Slog is definitely the hardest part so far for me is definitely the first read through. I struggle so much with that. Like just going through. It's not even that I hate it, like because a lot of it I'll enjoy, but then I'll get to a certain part where I'm like, oh, this is like going through taffy at this point, like the soggy middle. God. So that is most endurance-y for me, I guess.
Ellie.
Yeah, I was trying to equate it to kind of physical life stuff. And I'm thinking back to actually like my film set days, because some of those have been like the hardest like night shoots I've ever done, where you're working, but you're out in the cold. It's 2 a.m. and you got to like stay focused. Like you're on point, you're communicating, but like everyone around you's in the same boat, and it's just everyone is around. And that's kind of what I think of when I think of enduring. It's just kind of, especially if you're in overtime, if you're already past when the call sheet said you'd be home, but this scene's going overtime and everyone's like, well, I guess we're just sticking it out until we've got coverage and this scene is done. And just that kind of mentality, just got to pull yourselves up by the bootstraps and do it. And writing's very interesting because it's not this physical endurance, though we can talk about that and kind of like getting up and literally having to stretch out of our chairs, and how I've become a massive fan of little rolly spiky balls because I've invested in a pretty hectic gamer chair, which is my main writing chair. And that's helped with a lot of lower back stuff I probably had a couple of years ago. So I've solved a lot of my posture stuff, but I still need to remember to do these stretches with the balls in my lower back. Otherwise so we can talk about the physical stuff of writing as well. But so much of it is just that mental endurance and being able to concentrate when you don't want to. And obviously if you're in the middle of a project you love, it comes quite easily. You want to return to the keyboard, you want to do it. There's other projects. I can speak to it as recently as this morning, where this screenplay outline has been bugging me. I wanted it done at the end of last month. We're now in the middle of this month, and it's just been this just hanging over me, this black cloud that I haven't been able to finish this outline. And the more and more it gets like that, the more and more I find reasons and excuses not to engage with it. So my endurance this morning was I asked my partner to lock me in my office because I'm like, it is time where I need someone else's physical intervention. I'm like, I need you. And then he left the house, so he wasn't going to be a distraction. So it's like, I'm locked in my office. I have my outline on the wall. I'm going to get it done. He's out shopping, so he got, and I got it done. And it physically got to that point.
What if you needed a toilet? Yeah, what if you need to use the bathroom?
Yeah, that's what comes to mind.
No, I got it done. Like I do have my other housemate here in case of emergency. So I wasn't, but
Don't talk about the bathroom process. But yes, let's just say I got it done.
There's also bladder endurance when we're talking about writing. Yeah. No, it was good. I just needed it done. I'm like, you're going to shut the door on my office. I'm going to get it. And it actually worked. I just needed to be able to get around this mental block. And I solved it with quite extreme measures this morning.
Whatever it takes.
That's good, though. You literally can't leave. So it's like the alternative is you read some of the books you have in there instead and just completely ignore it.
It'd be like sitting down on my phone. But then I'm like, but I can't leave this room. I'm just wasting more time. It was a good psychological win to be like, I can't get out of this room until I finish my wall plotting.
Oh, that's brilliant. I'm a big fan of, like, if I'm really feeling uninspired, just like I put an hour on the timer and I'm like, okay, right. You don't have to, once the hour is over, you're done. But like the idea is just keep the words moving for the entire hour or as best as you can. Like, and if you need to stop, or I stop, but like try to keep it flowing as best I can. And then whatever happens doesn't matter. When the hour's up, okay, you did it, you're done. And like I really like that as like a hard focus space of just go. Don't worry about the words so much. You're just trying to keep it moving for an hour.
See, I'm totally the opposite of that, Phoenix, because if I have a timer that I have to do on the wall, I'm just constantly looking at the timer and going, come on. But if it's like a hard word count, it's like you don't finish until you get that many words on the page, or at least within a range of that. Then my brain's like, well, I guess we're here now. So I find the word count is actually more helpful for me personally. Like, especially if I'm on a roll, like over a couple of days, and it's like, okay, I started off doing 600 words, and I have to say, Ali is the queen of like just consistently getting a chunk of words down every day, which is great.
Yeah.
The consistency.
You both do very good at that, actually. I feel like you're both very consistent.
Thank you. I mean, well, here's the thing. I haven't been writing anything for the last couple of weeks for a few reasons, but anyway. But basically, once I get on a roll, I'll do one set of things, and then let's say 600 words one day, then the next day I'll be 800 words, and then maybe the next day I'll get like 1,200, and then I might start breaking it up into two, and I'll get one of like 800 and one of 1,000, and it'll just sort of snowball. And I think it caps out at about 1,800, 2,000 a day-ish, like if I can be consistent. But if I fall off that, then I have to start again, and it basically has to come back up from like 200 to 400 or so.
Yeah, on that, I completely agree. That the toughest ones to get back into when I feel like I've fallen off the horse. Yeah. And that's what this screenplay is for me. I haven't touched it maybe in about a week, and I've only been touching it once a week for like 5 weeks, and that's actually been agony. I'm like, I just need a stretch of time. I can get it done. For context for listeners, this is currently a long weekend. So that actually timed really well for me being able to be like, psychologically, I've got my rest day from my week, and then I can actually then hit it hard on my Sunday, knowing I'm not wasting my Sunday because I have Monday as a backup. And that kind of relaxing sandwich gave myself permission to work really hard today and waste my Sunday on it. But the reason it has been so painful is that my screenplay is a project I keep dropping and picking up again, picking up again. But in terms of that, the consistency, that lovely comment from Alex, that's when I keep that up on another project, that is so easy to just tap in and out of every morning. And I can very easily, consistently just access it, do 500 words, put it down. And that feels like there's no endurance associated with that, because that muscle's working, but the ones I keep putting down, picking up again, are far heavier weights, and that's when it's a struggle.
Yeah, I would really struggle with doing multiple things at the same time. Like maybe I can do a short story, like if in the middle of sort of a longer project, but even that is iffy because the odds of me coming back to that big work later dramatically reduce after I've done something like that. So I sort of trick myself into going like, oh yeah, I'll just take a break and do this short story. And then I'll get distracted by something else. Like I've got maybe three different semi-completed novels that are about the 20 to 25,000 word mark that I do plan to go back to, at least 2 of them. But I've sort of tricked myself from going back and consistently working on that by going on to a separate thing, which is just a small thing. And then by the time that gets done, I'm sort of like, I've moved on to something else. So yeah, you gotta be wary of that break.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. I think so. The novel that I'm doing 500 words down on every day, I enjoy that one, and that one has no deadline and no pressure. So it's kind of counterintuitive that that's the one that's getting my most attention and I'm finding the easiest, but it's because it doesn't have the deadline. Totally. The screenplay is wrapped up in not so much deadlines. My creative team are lovely and haven't put any pressure on me at all, but all that pressure's coming in from myself, knowing there's other people attached to it. So I'm like, this is something I need to do quickly, and therefore I am not doing it and really struggling. So therefore I'm being more productive than ever on all my other side projects rather than the one that I know needs attention.
So one thing I think I like this topic because it's something I'm proud of within myself. But I feel like there's endurance and a strong endurance muscle that you can tap into and pull out when you want, which comes from practice usually. Like I feel like that endurance muscle is one thing that starts to build a sense of professionalism on top of, like, that's when I think of a professional writer or someone who, I don't know, because like, what is a professional writer? Like, you can have a very like respectable, serious writer who's not necessarily held to deadlines or not necessarily even published, but I would have heaps of respect for them if they just have that, I guess, a certain dedication to their craft and take it seriously enough to hold themselves in it and to be like, I'm going to do 1,000 words today, and they hold themselves to that. Like, so I know I'm very proud of myself when I make a point of like respecting the writing, respecting the craft, and being like, yeah, if you want these things done, at the end of the day, you have to do them. So like when I am in those moments of like, just this last week, I made the point of like, all right, you know what, I'm done. Like, this is my job. I need to treat it like that. So, you know, get up early, make sure I'm doing the things I need to do, set down for, basically treat it like a 9 to 5, but make sure I'm putting myself in that space. Yeah. And just I get so much done. And it also just creates this sense of like, I respect what I'm doing here, and like holding your nose on the grind. And it doesn't feel like, I don't know, it's work, but it also feels, that's when I feel most accomplished, as well as when I stop thinking about it as well, because I've put myself fully in it.
Yeah, you don't have to like have your brain cycling over it because you have action on your work. And then there's this sense of creative relief at the end of that day where you're like, oh, I can feel good about it. It doesn't matter what I do for the rest of the day because I've done it. And so I've definitely been feeling that creative creep coming up because I haven't been writing per se. I have been doing some, like I've been scripting, so the TikToks and stuff, but it's a different feeling to be like, yeah, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do this and make it happen at a certain time. And I think that's an important part of it, the habitualization in it. I know for me and I believe for Ali, we tend to work best in the morning, or at least most consistently, because it's like, it's a time, it's carved out, you're sitting down there, you're making sure you're doing it. And it's almost like even if you don't get anything done, you have at least set aside that time and go, well, I said I'd do it. I'll try and do it. Like, you're not going off and doing something else. But ironically, having that sense of like, well, this is just when it's going to happen. I'll just turn up and see what happens. I think that actually frees you up more to just be like, well, I wrote a bunch of words yesterday. I can probably write some more words today. And then you do. That's how I find it anyway.
Yeah, no, I love how you're equating, well, both of you, with endurance with discipline.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I do have quite a disciplined routine. I think I've spoken to it before, but now that I have a full-time job that starts at 9:30 in the morning, which I leave the house of at 9 o'clock, my new discipline, something I've learned to endure, is I now get up at 5:30 every morning. And I was not a morning person. I have never been a morning person in my life until as of 3-4 months ago. But it was the only way I was going to survive the shift to full-time work. And I just, as you were saying with the professionalism, Phoenix, I needed to continue to prove to myself that I'm a professional writer in that I do write every day. So I wake up at 5:30, I'm at least on the keyboard by 6. So I have between 6 and 9 to throw at all my freelance work. And the 500 words towards my novel, that's just my fun craft stuff. That is me being on the horse, producing words. And then I spend the other 2 hours ignoring my screenplay and stressing about it, or admin emails, freelance admin emails. But now I'll be able to divvy some of that time up to writing my screenplay now that I've got the outline, which is a victory. But just that really, that raw discipline to be able to do that. And then at the end of my workday, I'm allowed to be exhausted. I don't have to think about it. That freedom you were saying, Alex, that I don't try and pressure myself to write of an evening when my brain is thoroughly dead, because I managed to achieve it in the morning, in those hours I set aside to do it in the morning, to the point where I think it's important. It would be interesting to talk about like the people around us and how they get used to our routines, or how they support our routines, our loved ones. Because I know they're very good about supporting that change, in that I go to bed early now so I can get up early. And my housemate needed to ask a big favor of me last Monday. He was sick, and so I had to help drive him to uni so he could pick up his laptop. And he knew the request was going to eat into my writing time, my precious sacred morning writing time. So when he came to me with the request, it also came with but I'll buy you dinner.
That's so nice.
A very lovely exchange. So it was kind of like, all right, yep, I won't be getting any writing done that morning. I'll help you out here. And then we had pizza the other night and it was lovely.
Nice.
So I just, I wanted to throw that question out to you guys because I know when we have to be disciplined and focused so much, I can only be successful with it because I'm surrounded by people who understand and support me in that endurance and discipline.
Yeah, I mean, I find like Liz is very good at like if I'll sit down and be like, hey, look, I have to do this. To be honest, she's actually out of the house most of the time very early in the morning, and recently I haven't been because she'll wake me up every morning when she gets up, and I have not been making the most of that. I've been sleeping in a little bit, which is not ideal, and I definitely need to get back into the habit of it and utilize that. But yeah. Generally, if I have something that I need to get done, I'm like, hey, look, maybe I need to sit down and just to do this for about 2 hours now, like as I'm doing right now. Like this is sort of part of the craft in a sense. She'll be like, okay, it's fine. I'll go into my room and just hang out and do that for an hour. You just let me know when when you want to do something, we'll go out or this sort of thing. So yeah, she's been very supportive. And my roommate is rarely there. Our other housemate is rarely there. Most of the time he'll be at work when I'm at home and vice versa.
Yeah. I live with my partner / not my wife.
Your wife, yeah.
But crazy. Yeah, it's just me and her living here. She's right here, actually. She's waving. But she's excellent. I don't know. She knows this is a big part of my life, and it's very it's what I bring in some income with it, as well as I take it very seriously. It's what feeds me. It's what drives a big part of my life. It's what I love and choose to engage with. So she's very good about when I also create the clear boundary at times as well of okay, just a heads up, I'm going to go into focus mode. And then it's okay, known. And then if she needs to say something, it is given hey, is it all right? Is it all right if I say something to you right now or something? It's treated with an asking and an appreciation of the space. And off of that, I think that's, our loved ones are very respectful of the space, but I also think that comes from the fact that we also respect that space ourselves. It's something we want to create for ourselves. It's something we know needs to be created. And so we create that space, and that space is then respected. So I think it's important that, the writer respect their space and their time and their writing. And it's important.
I think you've hit on something there. If you, and this probably can be extrapolated to all parts of life, but let's say specifically for work, if you are able to carve out the time and respect the need for that to be completed, then people will sort of recognize that and will support you in doing that. Whereas if you're just I really want to be a writer, and then it's oh, hey, we've got this thing we were going to go out, and it's oh, but I was going to do some writing now. It's if you haven't had a habit of doing that in the past, they might be well, are you? Is that really what you were going to do? But if you've got a habit set up of 5 o'clock, every weekday is when I'm going to sit down and do it. And I know you get back from work then, but I'm going to be unavailable to do that then. If you set up that habit, generally people will respect that because it's a consistent pattern. It's oh yeah, this is what you're doing. So it's well, if you prove it to yourself, you almost automatically prove it to other people, I think.
Yeah, I feel that habit is it's never too early to set that up. Even if you haven't written at all, but it was something you've wanted to do, and someone was oh, we're going out, and you were sternly actually, I'm going to stay and I'm going to write right now. If you create that border and set that for yourself and plant your feet in what you want to do in that moment, then that's what's going to happen, and that's what's going to be respected. So, okay. Whoa.
Totally.
I think that's been a mark of the success of our podcast as well, is we've all come to it with that same mentality. Once we picked a routine time, we were just that's going to be the same time. The podcast happens every week, and we've managed to make that work. And I'm actually quite proud of us as a team for sticking to that.
We're very consistent. It feels good.
And it's good too, because we don't all have to be super consistent every time, because there are some we can sort of shuffle it in and out, and it's not going to be oh, well, I can't do it because not everyone's going to be here. It's some people turn up some weeks and some people won't, or some people might be away for a couple of weeks, but there's enough people constantly on that to be cool, we're gonna make it happen. So it almost is self-perpetuating at this point, which is good.
Yeah. So we've all proven that we're very good endurers, very enduring. What do either of you have any set tricks to get yourself in that space, in that zone? Anything you use to help yourself really focus in?
Yeah, I would say most of them are lifestyle related. I think the first thing is setting a definite, I mean, we've just talked about this, but setting a definite time when you're going to sit down. If you have to have an alarm go off, so be it. But a time when you're like, hey, from this time to this time, in Ali's case, from 6 to 9 in the morning, that's when I'm going to sit down and that's when I'm going to do it. And just the act of deciding that, I think is a huge, massive thing. Aside from that, I think weird one, but I think getting enough sleep is a really important one. Like if you are underslept, your whole body goes out of whack. You can't, focus. You can't do anything. So I think that's a really underrated thing, getting enough sleep. And the third thing I'd say in that same vein is, for me at least, and I don't know if this translates to anyone else, I need to make sure that I am doing enough sort of fairly vigorous exercise to allow myself just to focus and not to be like, because I have some ADD tendencies. So if I don't stay on top of that and make sure that I'm like going to the gym or swimming or something, I'll sort of fall off and that's another discipline element. It's almost like a cornerstone thing that is helping other habits to stay in place. So I'd say those three things are pretty effective for me.
Yeah, I'll come at it from the other end then. I'll speak to all the kind of perfectionists out there who I know when I start to fall down, or when I'm struggling to endure, is almost when I'm being too hard on myself. So we've spoken how we've got the discipline, and there's probably a lot of people out there who are quite good and they're disciplined, but I start to unravel and my discipline falls apart when I set too many goals for myself. I've got too many things I want to achieve, and it becomes just this big mental pressure, and then I can't give my focus to anything because somehow all my endurance has gone towards panicking, thinking about it, the anxiety of it, and then I can't actually get it done. So I constantly have to tell myself, well, not to be too hard on myself if I don't meet those deadlines, if I don't meet those promises. Sure, I've carved out that time for myself, but if I don't achieve, I had wanted to finish that chapter by the end of this week. If I wanted to finish that, it's watching those deadlines come and go and not letting it be the end of the world. Aiming for it, but not punishing after the fact if I don't meet it. So it's setting the goals are healthy and great and motivating, but not letting there be any consequence for not meeting those goals, because that's where I'll undo myself very, very quickly. And I'm speaking to some other writer friends who are in the middle of it at the moment, especially. It's almost, there's a funny thing happens when you feel bad about not finding the time to write. You start stressing about it, and that stress makes you even more incapable of writing, and that's an awful cycle to try and get out of.
Yeah.
So there is an element to longevity of not being too hard on yourself as well.
Yeah, that's so important, because it's great when you have your set routine and you're able to stick to it, and you feel like, I put myself in that space again, I did it. And then, deadlines aside, even if you're not setting necessarily deadlines for yourself, but if you weren't able to make it to that space that day, or maybe someone did need a ride or a favor or whatever, I don't know, just shit happens. Sometimes it doesn't happen. Or my big one is sometimes I'm sitting down and it's okay, I'm in this space, or I don't know, whatever it is, and I'm just foggy, I'm not there, my mind's in a bunch of other places, and it's I really wanted to get this done today so I could do this other thing tomorrow or something. Sometimes I just say, you know what, stop this, jump to another task, because you're not going to do this right now, or you're not going to enjoy this, you're going to hurt yourself through it. So let it go and start fresh tomorrow, but drop it for tonight. Let yourself stop thinking about it, go relax, do whatever it is you need to do. You're coming in fresh tomorrow. Just stop. That's it. Yeah. Be gentle, and being gentle on myself. And that's a big one for me. And that's because one thing when I was thinking about endurance, one thing was endurance is a red flag. So the difference of the dark side of endurance, which is pushing yourself too hard. And I think one of the ways of establishing a healthy endurance relationship is being able to trust yourself to stop yourself when you need to, because otherwise you push yourself way into the ground. So part of healthy endurance is being able to stop the endurance, knowing when it's appropriate to stop. That's kind of in that vein.
Yeah, no, I've got a fun thing I'm playing with at the moment is because of this the manuscript, the one I'm doing 500 words towards a day, I'm almost at the end. I'm only like 6 scenes away. And I know this is a habit of myself that when I sense the end, that's the project that becomes more and more all consuming. I feel like if I was in the middle of it, it would be much easier to be like, I'll set that aside, spend more time on this other stuff. But because I'm approaching the end, it's almost, I don't have much of a say in that one being the one that's taking up the most mental real estate. It's just going to do that. And I've just had to accept that. That's the one that's taken my focus. And then I'm just managing all the other small things in and around it. So it is that fun game of you need to push yourself because otherwise this is never going to get done. But then also, as you were saying, Phoenix, if you push too hard, that's also incredibly counterintuitive. I wish I had all the answers. I can only speak to this as something I am right in the middle of, this push and pull. And I feel like I just had to wait it out and always just promise myself that I will get there. I've been doing it long enough that I know I eventually will get there. So just not punishing myself on the way to achieving the goal, getting it written, getting it finished. It will happen. I just got to stick to it.
And it's worth remembering as well that everyone has a totally different neurochemistry and a totally different way that they're going to process those things. So like you just said, you when you get to near the end of something, it begins to, you just want to work more and more on that. For me, it's actually the opposite. When I get to the end of something, I really struggle, and I fairly consistently underwrite something just so I can just get to the end of it and be like, okay, I'm done with that for now, and I kind of have to push myself a little bit to write a little more than I'd want, because otherwise I'm going to just have to go back over it again, to fill in the gaps and stuff, which I have to do anyway. So it's worth bearing in mind that someone's specific tips or specific strategies might not apply to you, because especially in terms of creativity, our brains are wired so differently. Like everyone has a completely different way of doing it. So I guess it's about picking the tools that work for you and maybe just setting aside the ones that don't work as well.
So totally true. There might even not be, maybe someone's listening to this and they're just like, you know what, like enduring's not even part of how I prefer to do it. And I'm perfectly happy to just like, I only write when inspiration comes, and that's when I write. And then like, if that works for you and that's like what makes you happy and feel like you're in it, and that's the balance you found between when you want to write and when, maybe you're working like your other jobs or just living your life, and that's kind of where writing fits nicely for you, or painting, creativity, whatever it is, then absolutely ride that wave. And congratulations on finding your flow. I'm going to steal this quote from the Writing Excuses podcast, because they talk about this a lot, in that we're all coming from it as we're working towards doing this all professionally ourselves. So we're thinking of tips and tricks and learning to push ourselves in a way that we can sustain a professional mindset towards it. But it is 100% worth acknowledging the people who, not everyone goes out and plays basketball because they want to play basketball professionally. Sometimes people just want to play basketball with their friends on a Thursday afternoon. And that there isn't that pressure for them to dedicate their lives to finding a routine that they're going to become the best basketball players. They're playing basketball for a completely different reason. It's just as legitimate what they're doing. It's just a different ball game. Hey.
And so you would approach your professional basketball career completely different than you would approach your Thursday afternoon basketball group.
Totally.
This is very specific, but I talked about tips and tricks. One thing that I found works really nicely for me is the Pomodoro timer technique. I actually love it. And especially like on YouTube, there are all these really fun Pomodoro different themed Pomodoro sessions. Like one of my favorites is you're in the, what is it called? The place in Hogsmeade in Harry Potter.
Cool.
The bar. I forget what the.
Yeah, I think it is Hogshead. Is it Hogshead?
Hogshead. That sounds right. Yep.
Yeah. But at the Hogshead, one is just like, all right, you're in there. And it's just like, that's your Pomodoro timer. And all it is just for 25 minutes, it's just ambient, like bar chatter,
That's
kind of
so
just
good.
like white noise, whatever. And then after 25 minutes, it fades into music. And I usually just mute the music and like,
Just keep
you know,
going.
you have 5 minutes to relax. And that's a good time to like, you know, get up, walk around, stretch, do whatever you want. So you don't, if I'm being very good, then I get up and walk around and stretch because it keeps me moving. And then, I have my headphones in the whole time. So then I just hear once the bar chatter comes back in, and I just come back to my laptop, do 25 more minutes. And then you do that for 2 hours. And then you can take a long break of 30 minutes and you come back for another 2 hours. But I find it a very nice structure for me. And it's nice to just be like, press play on a Pomodoro video. And I know that I'm going into a 2-hour portal. Like I come out the other end 2 hours later. It's like, whoa.
I have a similar thing, actually. There's a I think it's called Brain FM. I haven't used it for a while, but it's basically a sort of music or ambient sort of stuff plays, and theoretically there's something to do with brainwave synchronization. Apparently the science is there. It looks fairly legitimate, but who can say it? Total placebo effect.
I love this setup.
I have been using that for a while, and it does like an hour chunk of time will feel like it's almost half an hour. It'll be crazy. Just because it like zones you into that flow state. So whether or not it's a placebo or not, I find that quite effective. I think you pay like $8 a month or something for it, but it's pretty good.
Well, placebo or not, it worked. Like smashing.
Yeah, and I guess I'll be the counter school of thought in that the idea of sticking to those. I think I'd do the thing you said, Alex, about that. I would stare at the clock the whole time.
Yeah.
Being aware of that secondary framework.
Which Matan says upsets him as well.
Yeah. No, I don't think I could. I don't think it would help. I feel like it would just get in the way of, I don't know, maybe my own personal discipline that I've already have, or it would, I'd start to feel a bit cramped up. I'd feel a bit boxed in, and I wouldn't actually be able to write, I don't think.
I should say, I don't actually use that in the same way that Phoenix does. Like, I would use that more as okay, this is going to go on ambiently in the background, and like when it like fades out, I'm almost always surprised, and I'm like, oh, okay, on to the next one. So it's more of an ambient noise blocker sort of thing than necessarily a like, cool, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to take a break. So I think focusing less on the timing aspect of it for me personally makes it less stressful.
Just the audio cue is doing something for you.
Yeah, it's like associative, I suppose. Like
the main. So if I guess I should specify, if I'm writing, I tend not to use it. And I don't like timers so much unless I'm saying specifically like I'm unmotivated, I'm blocked, then I might do the timer to be like, all right, just write for an hour.
It's a solve if you're up against a wall. Yeah.
But most of the time I'm using the Pomodoro stuff is when I'm editing. If I'm editing and it's more grindy, then I like it because it's like, all right, just
fair enough.
I'm churning it out. But if I'm more in just like a creative writing space, then usually I don't listen to anything. And I just kind of stay with what's there. Okay, so
reading. I
have the reading this time. This is a children's book that is very representative, or represents quite a bit of endurance for me because it's gone through probably, I don't know how many drafts, like it's gone through many, 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 many drafts, but within those drafts, probably a good, like maybe 3 or 4 distinct versions where the story has been in completely different forms. But I'm committed to this story specifically because I really love it. And I'm just starting to revive it a bit more. And I'm sending it off to some agents at the moment. Yeah, so at the moment, it's called Chasing the Horizon. And it used to be called The Girl Who Ate the Sun. And just it's completely changed. But yeah, I love it. The world is full of a great many things and a great many questions. For instance, why does the sun set? A wonderful question and an even better story. Sun and her best friend, Wind, were girls with an appetite for answers. They were curious about everything, maybe just a little bit too curious. What's behind Horizon's back? Sun asked one day. I'm not sure, Wind replied. She's fast. I've never been able to look. Let's chase after her and find out, Sun said excitedly. Wind didn't need much convincing. Whoosh, they were off. They crossed fields, blew through deserts, and shivered their way past glaciers the size of buildings. Though Sun didn't shiver, she was quite warm. But Horizon was too fast. Horizon is following us from behind as well, Sun said as they rested on a hill. Maybe if we wait here, she'll come to us. But Horizon didn't budge. Sun became frustrated. Why won't she let us see behind her back? Just then, the earth began to rumble and grumble. The grumble became a mumble which soon turned to a jumble of words. The hill had something to say. Horizon won't let you get closer, I'm afraid, Hill began. How else are we supposed to see what's behind her back? Sun said while the wind swirled. Have you tried asking? Hill replied. She doesn't like being chased. It hurts her feelings. And I'll stop there.
Nice. I love that. I love that the mumble, grumble, jumble little.
Yeah.
Really fun.
I love that.
I've heard this so many times and I still love it. It does flow so well.
Thank you.
Very nice.
It all started so it's very different now. It used to be an actual little human girl and the wind, and they were talking about the horizon eating the sun at the end of every single day. And the girl was like, I want to eat the sun too. And so they were journeying to the horizon's end to eat the sun. And now it's a fully different thing. Because like editors and people I've shown it to, the reaction has always been good, but they're just like, it's a little like violent. Yeah. Like the act of eating the sun is a bit,
fair enough.
It's a bit much. And then at one point, I actually got it back, and it was just like, I was trying to incorporate too much feedback from too many people. And I actually ended up deleting pretty much all the story. And I'm like, that's it. I'm just going to rewrite it again. Cause like, I have the core of the story inside of me. It's just a matter of like, right, I'm just going to give it a new shape. I'm just going to try again.
And that takes a lot of endurance. So well done.
It took a lot of endurance. Thank you. And Alex, you have the quote for us today, I think.
Yeah, I do have one. Heroism is endurance for one moment more. And that's by George F. Kennan. I like that. I like the idea that it's like endurance is the standard, and that if you just go a little bit longer, that's heroic. I think that's really fun.
Mm-hmm. It's so short, but so like... Yeah. All right. We have endured through another episode. Thank you, everyone, for listening. This has been the Pros and Cons podcast, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.
You're listening to Pros and Cons, the Precipice Fiction podcast.